The Stealth Archer, a tale as old as time. Not even Faerun is safe from this unseen menace. And no matter how many arrows pincushion the enemy, it always seems windy. A playstyle that can literally change BG3 from turn-based combat into a real-time action RPG. The Stealth Archer is a concept I've been refining for the community in the last 2 years since BG3's release. It is a very engaging, rewarding playstyle, and I truly enjoy how active it is. You will plan around enemy sightlines, react to enemy movements, and fire arrows without anyone noticing. It genuinely breaks the game at times, as you can have as many first turns as you want. With fast enough reactions and some mechanical understanding, you can cut down most of an encounter from range before it even starts. And depending on your dice rolls, you can attack almost infinitely from greater invisibility. Or for those who would rather not rely on luck, darkness completely breaks the game, also allowing infinite attacks, but more importantly, complete invincibility and a cheat code that breaks the AI in combat. This video assumes you have either watched the Stealth Archer build guide or have read the Honor Mode build template, and will focus solely on the playstyle techniques that make this build concept work. So welcome to turn-based combat, but it's always your turn. Passive Trace and Greater Invisibility is one of the most broken combos in Baldur's Gate 3, allowing us to attack almost infinitely until we fail our stealth checks or run out of turn duration. Greater Invisibility scrolls start appearing at vendors at player level 5 and above, or if you're playing in a party, bards, sorcerers, archfey warlocks, wizards, and Circle of the Land Druids that pick Underdark have access to the spell. We will learn Passive Trace at Ranger level 5, and the +10 to stealth checks really helps us pass our Greater Invisibility rolls. When using Greater Invis, the first stealth check DC is 15, then the following is 17, increasing by 1 per check. On Honor Mode, the check should go from DC 15 to 16, then 19, 24, 31, 40, and so on. At the time of recording the script, however, my combat log showed much more random DCs. With the stealth checks increasing in difficulty each time we attack, we will eventually fail. However, let's look at some things that improve our chances of success. We discuss Passive Trace giving us a +10. Following my Stealth Archer build guide, our equipment and proficiencies add to 23. If you have someone on your team with enhanced ability, you can use the Cat's Grace variant of the spell for advantage on dexterity checks. Yes, I've read your comments about halflings. Okay, they can't roll ones. Thank you. Before we move on, speaking of comments, I get a lot of questions asking how I concentrate on both Passive Trace and Greater Invisibility, as they're both concentration spells. If I'm playing solo, I will just pick one spell. In this case, I'm only using Greater Invisibility to get a head start on a boss. To concentrate on more than one spell, you'll need more than one character. That's where my support Sorcerer comes in. With extended meta magic, we can double the duration with Greater Invisibility to 20 turns. Sneaking and enemy vision. How does it work? First of all, to see the enemy's vision, press and hold down the Shift key. This red area denotes where the enemy can see, and as soon as you stick your foot onto the zone, you'll be spotted and enter combat. However, if you are sneaking, when you enter their sightlines, passing stealth checks can keep you out of initiative. Here are some techniques from my own experience that will help you trespass through these vision cones and manipulate positioning to your advantage. The easiest one is to just use invisibility, as the enemies cannot see you. But where's the fun in that? In this example, I showed my friend Elena how to get better positioning for the jailer fight by moving to the edge of the red zone, using a transposition arrow into this corner here to get her into prime position to take on the spectators and imps. You can also cut line of sight by using darkness. Using arrows with the darkness spell, you can completely remove vision and pass by unimpeded. Great for passing ambushes. Here in this clip, I know the guards are waiting for me behind this door, so I block vision with a darkness arrow, then open the door and eviscerate them under the cover of darkness. How am I seeing through darkness? Good question. Darkness is one of the most powerful tools you can use in your own playthrough. I have completely substituted my greater invisibility for darkness because it is a lot more consistent and does not rely on increasingly difficult stealth rolls. By simply equipping the Eversight ring, generating darkness, and using your bonus action to hide in the area, it will be impossible for enemies to find you unless they also have the ability to see in magical darkness. So let's go over some sources of darkness. Darkness arrows only last for 3 turns, but you can track the duration by hovering your cursor over the patch of darkness and pressing T to inspect. There are also plenty of darkness scrolls in the game which last for 10 turns, but remember that those are concentration. While in darkness, the enemy will be blinded, giving them disadvantage to hit you, which is great. However, hiding in darkness means they can't even begin to look for you. They will all skip their turns, giving you invulnerability. Hiding in darkness honestly might as well be cheating with how badly it breaks the AI. Darkness isn't perfect for the entire game. There are some enemies who have Devil Sight, which counters it, the most notable ones being Yu-Gi-Oh! And his Merrigans, the Warlock Captain of the Gift Yankee Ambush, the Imps in the House of Hope, and Raphael. Here's some examples of how to use darkness. In combat, if you just crouch, the enemy's AI will literally break and do nothing. This does not work if you just stand and end your turn in darkness. However, it might be useful to do so to make the enemy's position closer to you. Classes that have access to hide as a bonus action are Gloomstalker, Shadow Monk, and Rogues. Action economy is key in this game and is critical in a solo playthrough, which is where my preference for a bonus action hide comes from, to keep my actions for damage. Another slept on tech is the combo of Darkness Arrow and Transposition arrows. Let me give you an example. Just entering Rivington, I shoot Arthur with a Darkness Arrow. This achieves 2 things. A, it puts him in a permanent state of rest, and B, it creates a blind spot where all my enemies are. I then use the Transposition arrow to teleport to where his body is, grabbing 500 gold, a lower city pass, and most importantly, a pizza. I only discovered this combo recently, but I've been having a lot of fun blinking around from one patch of darkness to another. Other non-combat uses can involve setting up a pickpocket on a vendor in a very busy area with a lot of eyes. Try to position your cloud in such a way that it doesn't cover the vendor but can still hide you at the same time. I generally aim for the edge of the darkness as close as I can to my victim. Infinite first turns. This is not an exaggeration. We can manipulate combat so we can have as many first turns as we want. The reason we would even want to is it synergizes with our kit incredibly well, especially with Gloomstalker's additional attack on turn 1, which deals an extra 1d8 damage. One feature that many people do not place enough importance on with our beloved Gloomstalker is a +3 to initiative. When initiative rolls are determined using a d4, a +3 head start on a high dex class means easy and consistent control of the turn order time after time. Let's go over some techniques on how to set up the infinite first turn. The first method I use is Gloomstalker Hide. Hold shift to see the enemy's vision radius, then move outside of the red area. Outside of the enemy's vision, you can hide, but pay attention to what I'm about to say. The enemy will go and investigate your last known position. With this fact in mind, we want to manipulate the AI to our advantage. They will go the most direct path to where you were last seen and try to reveal you. If you're nowhere near this revealed area, combat will end, letting you reset or restart the encounter on your own terms. When the enemy runs to your last known position, they'll spin around on the spot trying to find you. This forces you to make a dexterity saving throw to avoid being revealed. Once you've passed the save and combat ends, you can help them pass to a better place. The second method is invisibility. For a cost of a bonus action, popping an invisibility potion and moving away from your last known position is a very effective way to abuse the AI. Like the previous example, the enemy will run to where you were last seen, spin around, and then try to detect your presence. This prompts a dex save from you, and as long as you can pass, combat will immediately end. This is incredibly synergistic with the Deathstalker mantle, a cloak given to Dark Urge players. Once per turn, if the player manages to gain a kill with this item equipped, you gain invisibility for 2 turns. With the damage output of this build, a kill per turn is more than achievable. You'll want to set aside some movement speed to get away from where you scored the kill and went invisible. Do note, if you have Cull the Weak enabled, it's possible for the psychic damage to score the kill instead of you, preventing invisibility from triggering. Generally, this doesn't matter if you're relying on ending that turn with invisibility. You need to bear this in mind and toggle the ability off from the passives menu. And the last method I'll go over is just physically fleeing an encounter. As Gloomstalker, we have an extra 3 meters move speed at the start of combat. I highly recommend combining this with Enhanced Leap to cover incredible distances with just your bonus action. Just a quick mention that Enhanced Leap is a ritual spell, meaning it does not cost resources outside of combat. If you know you're going to start an encounter, it is a very good idea to cast this on yourself before engaging as it lasts 10 turns. With our mobility, we can strike the enemy hard, bonus action dash, or Enhanced Leap past the 27 meter distance requirement, then flee combat. Then we can return back from camp to do this cycle all over again. Another tip that I can give you here is to target enemies that are closest to you, because once they are removed, the distance required to flee will update to the next closest enemy, giving you more space to work with. When you combine the infinite first turn technique with our assassin subclass, we can guarantee critical hits on every attack, setting up our first turn damage nova with some unbelievable damage rider interactions. The first step in the process of snowballing into an unstoppable death machine is buffs. There are a few to go through, but don't worry, we'll complete entire acts without long resting. Pop an elixir to get either 21 or 27 strength. This strength is incredibly powerful, and stacked on top of the gear we're going to pick up, it really makes the Titan Strength's damage riders pop off, not to mention increasing your carry weight for all your essentials. Using the Drakethroat Glaive, purchased from Roa Moonglow after she moves to Moonrise Towers in Act 2, we will cast Draconic Elemental Weapon on our Titan String, giving us a +1 bonus to our attack rolls and allowing our bow to deal an extra 1d4 damage with an element of our choice. That choice will depend on the synergy you have chosen for your archer, which I've outlined in Act 2 of the build guide. But briefly, here are a few examples. Cold damage for the Snowbow String and encrusted gear, making your enemy slip or become frozen. Or thunder damage of your Gloves of Belligerent Skies to prone your enemies with reverberation. Next, Longstrider. 3 meters additional movement is a huge mobility boost during combat and perfect for setting up positioning or giving you enough distance to flee combat. And finally, Pass Without Trace. This gives a flat 10 bonus to all stealth checks, which will help you with out-of-combat attacking or staying hidden when you cross enemy sight lines. Both Longstrider and Pass Without Trace last until long rest, so you really can just cast them and forget for a while. Pass Without Trace is also a concentration, making it perfect for use for the strange Conduit ring, giving you 1d4 psychic damage for very little effort. The last thing we will go over is using the Shadeclinger Armour for advantage on saving throws. This one is an exploit, so only use it in your playthrough if you desire. It is not needed, but here in case if you want to leverage it. First of all, find an obscured area. You can confirm this by seeing the Clinging Shadows buff. Next, unequip or change to a different armor piece. Your Clinging Shadows buff will remain until your next long rest and stay on even if you are in broad daylight. Ending this section is my buff routine just before a fight. I throw an invis potion on the ground if I need an escape, and also a speed pot so I don't have to waste my bonus action. All you need to do is to walk into these surfaces to gain the benefits of the potions. If the boss is high armor class, I will use an Oil of Accuracy to give me +2 onto my attack rolls. Some examples of high AC bosses include Ketheric, Raphael, and Ansur. If I want to run over an enemy, I will use Broodmother's Revenge instead, proccing it with a pre-fight small healing potion, or during the fight with a Raspberry. Do note that Broodmother's counts as a coating and will override any other active weapon coating. Another mention of weapon coatings that might be worth trying out: Drow Poison and Carabazan's Poison, both at DC 13 con save, and can completely disable anyone who fails. Whether sleeping or paralyzed, the character cannot move or act and automatically fails any strength or dexterity checks. The key takeaway for me, however, is that any attack within 3 meters of the target will be an automatic crit. How do you trigger surprise rounds for assassinate ambush crits? There are many ways, but before we go over them, let's set up some groundwork. Generally, if you engage the enemy within its vision radius, you will trigger a surprise round. I really want to emphasize the within part. As soon as you attack outside of this radius, it stops being consistent. With that in mind, here are some consistent methods I found personally, starting with the simplest one, going invisible and attacking within the enemy's vision range. Another method I find extremely consistent with this build is using bonus action abilities such as Hunter's Mark or any Illithid power, if you have the Awakens buff, that is. This is so consistent, I can guarantee a one-turn answer with this method every single time. How do you attack without getting into combat? I first discovered how Larian's game engine handles height relative to distance from their previous title, Divinity Original Sin 2. There, the ballistic shot ability dealt increased damage based on the distance it was fired from. But I realized you could use that height in that game to hyperextend your attack range far beyond the intended limit, letting you do some serious damage. Simply put, you could add height to your range to one-shot enemies without ever entering combat. Applying this principle to BG3, I found the mechanic worked in much the same way, which has allowed me to push the Stealth Archer concept as far as I have. A couple of years later, it's lovely to see this playstyle thrive in the community, but there are lots of little things I've learnt over that time that I can share here. The playstyle is very active and mechanical, which is enjoyable if you prefer a faster paced and reactive gameplay. The ceiling on this tech is quite high, but worth chasing if you do want to turn BG3 into an action RPG. Before we start on how to achieve out of combat attacking, let's go over the hotkeys, which you'll definitely need if you are to execute this efficiently. Holding down Shift allows you to see the enemy's vision cones in red. You'll plan your movements to avoid being in the zone at all costs. Holding down Control displays your attack range. This will update as you move, and the complexity will come from utilizing the max range of your attack combined with the movement of both your character and the enemy. And whilst holding down Control, you can left click to shoot. Using this technique, you can rapidly fire arrows. If you use Control click on a target outside of your displayed range, your character will move until they are in range in order to execute this attack command. You can interrupt this anytime by right-clicking. With these hotkeys in mind, let's practice them with the simplest out of combat attacking method. By using Hide, we can effectively extend our attack range with our bow beyond the point where an enemy would typically react to you and draw you into combat. I know the perfect spot to practice out of combat attacking. Follow me to the Grand Mausoleum waypoint in Act 2. This is my favorite fishing spot and I'd love to share it with you. Here I use the fire arrow to reveal the Kuo-toa. I view my range of control and then left click to send an arrow flying. Since we're up so high, the enemy does not know what to do, allowing you to enjoy target practice to your heart's content. There are many areas in the game where you can employ this technique, but I'll leave you with a couple of ideas here. Clearing the cash guards and steel watches off the dogs from the counting house roof is super fun. Also, the rooftops of the lower city are a vibe for picking off the flaming fists for easy experience. The next out of combat method is using the max range on your attack. By only attacking using the extremities of your range, you will not get pulled into combat. However, you will be presented with two problems when doing this. Firstly, attacking at max range will impose disadvantage on your attack rolls, which means you'll miss a lot unless you optimize to counter poor hit rate. If you followed my guide, the risky ring will do a lot of the heavier lifting here, offsetting that disadvantage to just a neutral roll. Other important factors in our hit rate include archery fighting style for a +2, draconic elemental weapon for a +1, and a high dexterity stat for up to a +5. The second problem we're presented with in this unintended playstyle is the enemy reacting in real time to becoming a pincushion for your arrows. They will run around trying to look for you. You should react immediately and start moving out of range, holding shift to assist you in keeping track of enemy sightlines as they run around trying to find you. Do you see these white spotlights on the ground there? They denote your last known location and will be where the enemy will go looking for you. Use this to your advantage as their movement will become quite predictable once you get the hang of it. What you want to do is reposition again using control to see the boundary of your attack range. Repeat this as many times as you want. Do note if you ever cross the enemy sideline turn, you will enter combat. So in summary, control and left click to rapidly shoot an enemy at max range. If they react, hold shift to see what they're doing and move away from their sight. Practice makes perfect, and do have fun with it. That's not the only out of combat attacking you can do. Other methods include use of greater invisibility, quite effective at softening up a boss for your party, and lastly, the most effortless of them all, usage of darkness. Literally just stand in your own cloud and start shooting. Aura of Murder. The Baldur armor emits an aura that gives everyone in it piercing vulnerability, doubling the damage they take from piercing weapons, which is the damage type of our time string. This aura triggers within 2 meters, and you can double check this by looking at the enemy status or description. However, this presents us with a problem. We want to deal incredible damage, but we have to get up close to our enemies with our ranged weapon, which should impose disadvantage. Luckily, there is a sweet spot that you can stand where we don't get disadvantage on our attack roll. See how it says enemy too close? But if I move over here, I have the advantage from my Ruski ring and can still apply the aura. This will work on the majority of enemies. However, Ansur has a pretty big janky hitbox where you are threatened within the Aura of Murder range. So that leaves us with figuring out an alternative. If I'm playing solo, I honestly just rely on my hit rate. However, if you're playing in a party, you can just give the Baldur's armor to an ally and have them get up close and personal to the enemy to apply the aura instead. Damage riding. I've mentioned damage riders a few times, but what does that actually mean? To put it as simply as possible, some sources of damage can be applied multiple times in a single attack. This is a much larger topic, which is outside the scope of this video, but I will explain as clearly as possible the mechanics that are relevant. In Act 1, the damage riders you're relying on are Titan Weapon and Special Arrows. The Titan Weapon feature adds a strength modifier to your weapon damage. When you use a special arrow, your strength modifier applies again to that arrow's damage. This is going to remain the case for the entire game, but as we progress, we're only going to add to this concept in order to snowball our damage to insane levels. At level 6, you start to find arrow mini targets sold by vendors. These bounce from the initial target to multiple others in range, dealing half weapon damage on each bounce. Each hit also adds a strength modifier, offsetting the fact they do half damage. More importantly, if your first hit is a crit, then every bounce will also be a critical. Late game Craterflesh dollar riding. In Act 3, when we pick up the Craterflesh Gloves, we start to see some crazy damage from riders using the same mechanics we've been working with the whole game. That arrow did 253 damage. How did we arrive at that total? Let's break down the interactions. First, the damage from the attack, as you would expect. Weapon damage being 2d8 for a slaying arrow, 14, enchanted weapon +1, dexterity modifier +5, sharpshooter +10, cloud giant +8, $, 7 + 7 for 14, totaling 52. And with the Baldur's vulnerability, we double it to 104, and -4 from Great Worm Scale on Ansur for a total of 100. But as you can see here in the log, we now have more than 2 entries for damage from just one attack. So what's happening here? Well, we've looked at the first entry, but the second looks very similar. The slaying arrows deal double damage against their intended target. They do this by utilizing the Titan weapon feature, like any other special arrow would, riding your strength and your dex modifiers to increase its damage. However, in this case, all of the weapon damage is doubled, meaning the total initial attack damage happens twice. So the second entry in our log breaks down the exact same way as before. For weapon damage, 2d8 for a slaying arrow, 13, enchanted weapon +1, dex modifier +5, sharpshooter +10, cloud giant +8, $, 7 + 7, totaling 51. We double it with the Baldur's vulnerability equals 102, and take away 4 from Ansur's Great Worm Scales for a total of 98. But what are these instances of force damage? These are from the Craterflesh Gloves, and they only trigger on a critical hit. They should deal 1d6 force damage, but since they're being treated as critical damage themselves, they're dealing 2d6 instead. So the first instance we're seeing is because of the first instance of weapon damage. And what we're seeing here is force damage 2d6 for 10, dollars 7 plus 7 for 14, Cloud Giant plus 8, 32 minus 4 for a total of 28. But the second instance of Craterflesh applies because of the second instance of weapon damage and breaks down in the same way. Force damage 2d6 for 9, double dollars for 14, Cloud Giant plus 8, 31 minus 4, totaling 27. Okay, to summarize, we had 2 instances of double force damage from Craterflesh, 4 instances of Cloud Giant strength from Titan weapon, and 8 instances of Dollar Maris from our pair of daggers. To cap this all off, the Balor's armor doubles the piercing damage, which is all of the damage included in both instances of weapon damage. Before I leave you, sweethearts, let me give you some practical in-game examples of a turn-based combat loop. If you need more of a walkthrough, check out my live streams or videos on my channel. Anyways, for Act 1, let's use this Ogre Fight as an example. If you're playing solo, you should cast Enhanced Leap out of combat whenever you expect to fight. I then Nova this bugbear, and then I'm left with the Ogre. I know she hits pretty hard, so I use my bonus action to leap onto the roof here and use the building to block her line of sight, giving me cover. By being on the roof, I have a +2 high ground bonus, giving me a massive boost to my hit rate. If you don't have use of cover, you can use the Enhanced Leap to create a huge gap between you and your foe, forcing them to waste their action on a dash, giving you a safe turn from being attacked. For Act 2, the mid-game, let's use Ketheric as an example. He has high AC, so I pre-coat my bow with an oil of accuracy to counter that. I also want to reach him on turn 1, so I drink a fly potion and a speed pot. After the cutscene, I fly onto the pillar for an extra +2 onto my attack roll. I select a nice arrow and shoot it at him, causing the strength modifier to double dip from the Titan string and forcing the old man to also make a saving throw against falling prone. I will fire all my arrows apart from one and assess the situation. If I do not cutscene him turn 1, I will then use one darkness arrow where I'm standing to hide in. For Act 3, let's use an enemy who will test our damage output, Ansur. He has very high AC and will threaten us with his gigantic hitbox, so Oil of Accuracy will be our answer. Pun not intended, by the way. I go invisible and use my bonus action ability, Concentrated Blast, to trigger a surprise round. I use Concentrated Blast here because it cannot miss, which is the key to triggering the surprise round with 100% consistency. I know I will crit as an assassin on a surprise round, so the next thought I have is how to do the most damage on this Nova round. First, I have to set up the Aura of Murder for piercing vulnerability by positioning close enough that I can see the status effect on Ansur. In this example, I'll go all out for content purposes, so I will action surge, use a speed potion, and consume Terrazol for incredible action economy. Yes, I do have 4 action points with 1 character. Since Ansur is an undead dragon, I will use an undead slaying arrow to add yet another damage rider source and increase my damage output even further. If you're missing the achievement to shoot a dragon out of the sky, my build can consistently do this damage in a single turn. Do keep in mind, we still have action economy left, and this was a surprise round, meaning we actually had another turn for free after this round.